let's talk about leaving. That's the topic for today. When I first tried to leave my husband, we have been together for 14 years. We had a son who had just turned, or he was 2.5, and then a baby girl, half year old, sleeping in the bedroom. My husband had been disappearing, lying. I suspected that he was cheating on me. But apart from that, he was acting really kind and attentive. And I thought that he was a loving father. When he was home, and during this period, he was home quite a bit with us. And he did give a lot of attention to the kids. But this evening, I just had it with his lying and the suspected unfaithfulness. And I asked him, or not asked, I was actually a bit angry. And I told him to get out. It was more frustration than trying to hurt him. Because I still loved him very deeply. But I did put my fist like this and thumped his chest. More like a gesture of, I don't know what to do, and I want you to stop hurting me. But this gesture enraged him, and he yelled at me, "So, you're hitting your husband?" And after that, it's like the night is a bit of a blur, because what happened just very shortly afterwards would put me into a shock state for the weeks to follow. He punched me in the face, and he also went after me with a knife. And I was certain that I was going to die. And I will put a picture of my face here so that you can see how I looked. It was taken by him a few days after this incident. I did manage to get him to calm down. And he dropped the knife. It fell from his hand, and then he just lay down on the kitchen floor and sobbed and was mortified. What have I done? What have I done? You're the love of my life. You're like my mother and my sister, and you're like my everything, and now I have ruined everything. And he was, I think, he disappeared. Seriously, I can't remember actually what happened for this period. I was in a state for several weeks, as I said, just like someone had pushed the off button. But this particular night, I remember just walking back and forth to the bathroom and then out to the living room, and just being in a state of shock. You know, when you are sobbing, but it's not just sobbing, it's like hysteria. And not being able to understand or like take in what had happened. And I also remember this advice crossing my mind. You need to leave if he ever hits you. You need to leave right away. And that's an advice you have probably heard. So the first time he ever hits you, you should leave. I just need to show you this, the view. It's beautiful, really beautiful. Okay, but the thing was that I had known this man for 14 years. So, an ant just bit me. How did that happen? I got these sandals, so they're very comfy, but yeah, it's all right. I'm tough, I've been through worse. We got together when I was 15. He was my first serious boyfriend, and I loved him, or it was not only love, it was also trauma bonding. Because in hindsight, I can see that he was very manipulative. And I was doing most of the work in the relationship, but I didn't realize it. It was like what I was doing was just what I was supposed to do. Oh, look at these flowers. They're so beautiful. I can't remember the name. It's like, if I remember it, I will put it in text over the video. It's a beautiful name. It has to do with stars. You only see them up here in the north. Let's see. My thought was to get over. I'll walk in the other direction. The things that he did for me was so much weight was put on those things. So he was the one who would set the rules for our relationship and who would decide what was important or what was just my job. But I didn't realize it. I didn't realize that I was being used. I trusted in him a lot, and he did do a lot of romantic and nice gestures for me. And I thought that I could trust him for anything, that he would always be there when I needed him. Now, I wasn't a person who needed someone that often, But when I did need him, he, very seldom, but he was there, I thought. Also, the first 14 years, we had done a lot of things together. So while I was still studying, he brought me to travel with him over Europe. And we traveled, for many years, we traveled a few times a year. And I got to experience things I would never have been able to experience on my student budget. And I thought that was wonderful. It was a sign that he really loved me, that he would take me to do these things. Also, we had had fights before, and it had happened that he had destroyed some objects when we were arguing. And as he explained to me, it was because he had troubles dealing with his anger. That was just his personality. And it was something that he was working on, but he really needed my understanding. And he really needed me to stop pushing him when he got angry. So we had talked about this like a few times. When we would get into an argument, then he would get very angry. And then he would say to me, "You need to let me leave now. I don't want to do something that I regret." And I had a very hard time letting him go because I wanted to sort things out. Like, our arguments would get so heated, and I didn't realize that he was the one who was like causing that drama. If I would bring up an issue, then he would like accuse me of something, or he would get increasingly angry. And when you're trying to reach someone who's angry, then you're speaking louder yourself. So he was creating that. I could never reach him. Like, it always ended up with me just having to, because his voice was so loud, I just backed off. And sometimes I would apologize just because just starting an argument over something that really wasn't that important. Like, if we love each other, then why would I even bring these small things up and start an argument? And because it was me who had brought the issue up, and like contributed to the situation, and he wasn't able to deal with his anger, then I had to be the responsible one. So, and also I was in a position where I was on maternity leave, but not from a job. I was on the lowest. Here in Sweden, we can have maternity leave even if we don't have a job yet, but it pays very little. So I was dependent on him financially because I got pregnant during the last year of studies, so I didn't have a chance to start work. Another thing that prevented me from taking action was that he always wanted our relationship. It was a bit like he trained me into secrecy. So no one should ever know about if we are having some issues. You shouldn't tell anyone about this and that. And don't tell anyone that we are doing these things because they will get jealous of you, because not that many husbands are doing this for their wives and your friends. Like I didn't have that many friends. I did have a few girlfriends who had for many years that were good friends. But he would like plant little seeds in my mind that they are jealous of you, or I saw the way she looked at you, like I had never told anyone that we were having any troubles. And just now reaching out and telling them that this had happened, it felt like if you never talk about any problems, then it's hard to just suddenly open up about such a big issue. And also, I wasn't prepared to just walk away from this. This was my children's father. We had so many good years together. And like he supported me during the studies. And we shared like the good and the bad. And like that advice, it only applies to women who are in real abusive relationships, right? Because an abusive man wouldn't be able to stay with me for 14 years and not hit me if that was, like if he was an abuser, right? So that advice mustn't really apply to us. Like, and also, I thought we were going through a crisis. He had become unemployed, and this was a time where there were troubles in his country of origin, and he was worried about what would happen there. It was a conflict. And I saw this like, this is just the crisis between us really deepening, and now this happened and we both contributed to it. And he also like complained about how his chest was hurting from me hitting him the days that followed. And I didn't really reply. I was still numb, but I thought perhaps I did hit him. Perhaps I did hit him harder. Like that was not my meaning. But perhaps I did. I mean, he says that it hurts. Still, I must have hit him really hard, even though I don't remember it like that. I even told him, sorry for hitting you. And the photo that I showed you, he took that a few days later. As he said, I need this reminder to be with me always, because it is very, very wrong for a man to hit a woman. And I need to remember this day that I acted like this, so that I will never ever do it again. And I swear I will never lay a hand on you again. So I stayed. This was 2017 in the spring. It was, well, we did have some good days or good times during this period. But as the years progressed on, then things would become darker eventually. And this episode like sticked in my mind somehow, whenever I would think about leaving him, I would remember what happened, and I would think, what would he do if I try to leave? At least now, even if I'm not happy, or even if he is disappearing or perhaps cheating on me, at least we are safe. At least my kids have a mother, and things are mostly fine. I mean, we don't usually argue, and I found a way to get going. Also, this was not the only thing that happened in my life. Like this relationship, it was so much more. I was a mother. I started to work as a doctor the year after. COVID came, and I mean, I was doing my rotations at the hospital during COVID. And if there is a threat, I didn't know if I would get sick. We didn't get the vaccine until late as junior doctors. And I didn't know if I would get infected. It felt good to have someone to share life with and someone to share responsibilities with. Even though in hindsight I realized we didn't share that much. I was doing it all and he was actually creating more work for me. But somehow it felt safe. At least he told me what to do. And the hope that things would get better, even though things did get slowly worse, like he was stretching the boundaries. And doing more things to hurt me and to make things difficult. So, like the last few years, it ramped up actually after I got my license. And also, things got worse after I started letting him draw me into arguments. So, when I found a method, I thought that, well, when we argue, we sort of egg each other on and it gets really out of hand. So I need to find a method. I need to deal with my own triggers. I need to be able to step away and not put on him to make me feel better. I started expecting less and less of him, and I learned how to deal with my emotions by myself. And I also learned how to step away from an argument. So if he would try to engage me, then I would just say, I don't want to argue. I love you, but I will not argue. I just walked away. And these things in combination, I think, made him feel like he was losing the power to control me, to control my emotions. And I was becoming independent on him. He didn't want that. And that ramped up the behavior, the bad behavior. And he did a lot of things, I think, to shock me out of my composure. And as I said, I would walk away or try not to argue. Sometimes I would go into the bathroom and cry. But I would lock the door and I wouldn't go out. Like I would pull away so that we wouldn't have these arguments. It did hurt me a lot during those last years, and I did have a lot of anxiety. And I felt increasingly tired, stressed. I was working full time, and he was demanding more and more. It was like every time he would put another chore on my list, it would start with a nice suggestion. For example, he came up with this thing that me and the kids should exercise every morning. First it was that the whole family should exercise together every morning for a few minutes. And I thought, well, that's fine. That's a good idea. And he would lead the exercising. So this is how we do it. It was like 10 minutes. And in the beginning it was fun. We would do some jumping jacks and run around in a circle, and the kids would think it was fun. But then he would tell me how I should do the exercises, even though some of his suggestions were wrong. I do have hypermobility, so I can't do. When I do certain exercises, I need to be very careful with how I bend my knees, for example, so that it doesn't overextend in the wrong direction. And he would try to instruct me on how to do the exercises, but his instructions would be not correct. And then I would tell him I can't do that. That would hurt me. It became increasingly he was nagging, especially me. And then he would okay, so tomorrow I can't do the exercises, but you should do it with the kids. And then it was he started to demand that we do these exercises just to keep up this routine that he started. And in the end, it was down to him sleeping in and me supposed to do these exercises with the kids because it's a good thing for them to learn, to start the morning like that. And it becomes very hard to argue about these things. Sun is from that direction. So, and when there are hundreds of those things, the small things that's good to do. It's healthy to do. It's better than starting with watching iPad or something. But I couldn't do everything. Even though I tried though. And sometimes I did say, no, I can't. And then he would be angry and be irritated and blame me. But there were more and more such things that he demanded that I do or take over responsibility for. And when it's just one thing, if it's just the exercise, and then he would silent treat me, so he wouldn't speak to me, or he would get be very angry, and then you think, well, how about I just do it? It's just a few minutes, it's no big deal. But when there are so many things like that, my whole life became rooted in this routine. It's actually called coercive control. I didn't know that back then. But coercive control is when the partner tries to control all like more and more aspects of your life, like what you are doing and what you're eating and how you're speaking and what your schedule should be like and what you should think. And during the last years, I really lost touch. I lost touch with my inner compass. So I knew that I wasn't feeling good, and I felt like I was being burned out by everything, and he would just refuse to understand it. And I remember many times telling him, like, I can't, it's too much with the work and with the kids. And he would just say, well, you wanted to be a mother. This is life as a mother. Apparently, you have a very weak willpower. So, and well, even though I knew on some level, some of the things he was saying, I thought that he just misunderstood me, or he doesn't know how things are for me, or it's easy for him to say he's unemployed and not here for the kids. And he would say that, well, that's because I'm a man, so I can't really deal with the kids and the homemaking stuff. And I didn't buy that, but I thought that, well, he's just dysfunctional. And I knew at this point that he had a narcissistic personality disorder. But like from how I understood it, it was, well, a psychiatric disorder. And it was an inability to empathize with others. And it was a selfish worldview. But I didn't understand how deep it went. And I didn't understand everything about these manipulative tactics. It's very hard to understand these things when you're in it. And it's very hard to imagine that this would happen to you. Like, I'm an educated woman, a doctor. I would end up in a relationship with a man who is using me while he says that he loves me above everything. It was unthinkable. Well, apparently he does have some issues, and he's not really able to put himself in another person's shoes. So, well, now I'm stuck with him. We have kids together, and I was like wondering if he had some, like, I knew that something was wrong, and it felt like things were getting worse. But I thought that partly, like, is he depressed? Because he was starting to express a lot of dark views, and sometimes about himself, or thoughts about harming himself or harming us. And I thought that, is he depressed? And he was also pulling back more, like from being an engaged father or very interested in the kids that I saw, like the first couple of years. He was almost never there. Like on the weekdays, he would come home after they slept. He would still take them, like on the Sundays. I did cook for the entire week. And like, this is one of the things that I demanded when I started working full time. I said that because he couldn't cook, I said that if I'm to cook, then I need you to take the kids on Sundays. So that day I can make and I made a large amount of foods on that day. And it took me many, many hours because I was cooking everything from scratch. It was chicken stews and salmon in the oven, or fish soup, or like fried fish or something. I would box everything up and keep it for the week, including like lunch boxes for myself. And now I can't really understand how I did it all. But back then I was just doing this on a routine, and I was really tired though. So I would crash like every evening when the kids went to bed around 7 p.m. I would also go to bed, and I would feel bad for the fact that, well, I'm not going up and spending some time with him, my husband, so how are things going to improve if I just go to sleep all the time? But I just couldn't force myself to go up. Also, most of the times, if I did, which I did, like 1 or 2 times a week, if it was a good week, then he wouldn't be really nice to me, or he would ignore me. But I had gotten used to that as well. It's so weird. I thought I was ugly and overweight, even though I was half the weight I'm now. And like if I would try to tell him a story, then he would look at his phone and ignore me. Or he would like point out something in the story that I did wrong, or that I missed or didn't understand. So we weren't communicating. It was a horrible way to live. And it did eventually become unbearable, really unbearable. And I had anxiety, but I still felt stuck. So how would I leave? Like, I couldn't even imagine how I would do that. And he had also tricked me into signing this huge loan a few years before. And this is what these people do. So they tie you down with different things. Emotional and financial. He was creating these problems and these financial traps just to make sure that I couldn't go anywhere. Well, one day it was already unbearable, and then he just sort of went over the limit to what I would find acceptable. And the limit was that he did something just to torment me. He took a decision that was only to make things harder for me, and he looked he smirked. It's horrible. And I just realized that this mess, this torment that I'm in, it's of his making. Like, he is behind this. He's making it on purpose. And then I just left, even though I didn't know if it would end well. I thought that it's quite a big chance that I'm not making it. I was sure at this point that he was going to try to end my life. and he did begin to stalk me. And at first, I didn't know that I was being stalked. I was so broken down and exhausted, and like almost like I was in a mental freeze after I left. Like, I can't be with him, but I can't move forward. I don't know what to do. And I did get help from, not with everything, I had to do a lot myself, but I did get some invaluable help from a female friend who lended me some money, and from some family members who helped me with housing for the first period. And eventually I contacted the police. But this was like a half a year after I left, and I did document the stalking, and I had pictures of gifts that he had left, and messages and emails and missed calls and calls to the family. So that was a good thing that I documented that, because that documentation was the key to getting help. So here's another thing that I misunderstood. I thought that he's, like, after I was able to see that this is of his making, he's creating this, he's abusing me, he is manipulating me, he's threatening me. I thought that, well, if I just leave, then I will be able to apply for help, because he's clearly abusive. But my story isn't enough. Just that's like, the story isn't enough to get help. So if you are in the process of leaving, please get some evidence, get some photos, document anything that you can. A video of him being abusive is the best, because the picture I shared with you in the beginning of my black eye, and the episode where he went after me with the knife, that episode the prosecutor has decided to drop, because it's word against word, and I don't have any more evidence than this picture. The stalking, on the other hand, there will be a trial, because there I have the documentation. And it was the documentation that helped me get the protected identity, so that he will not be able to search my address in any register. So the conclusion for this video is that the advice that leave if he hits you, it's not the wrong advice. It's just that it's insufficient. It leaves out the emotional abuse part, that is often the more damaging part. Like the part that makes you question yourself and believe that you need to fix things, and the part that makes you freeze so you can't make any decisions, because you believe that you're always making stupid mistakes and crazy decisions, and that you need this person. And the financial abuse, getting you to sign loans and taking your cards and using your money, that's also a very important aspect of it. And at the point where the first blow comes, you're often very deep in it, and it's hard to leave at that point. It's hard to leave if you don't have any help. And the advice, just leave, also puts blame on the victim, I think. It's like, okay, so, but why didn't you leave? If you would have left, then none of this would have happened. And the thing is that much of it would have happened anyway. And